Hello, and welcome to the DC Beer Show. I am your host tonight, Michael Stein. I am not Jacob Scoopsburg. And with me, as always, is our trusty co-owner, wonderful friend, standby photographer, and absolute social connector, Brandy Holder. Hi, Brandy.
Hey, Mike. I love seeing your face. I'm very elated right now.
And it's a special show because we have another DC Beer co-owner and our producer extraordinaire, Richard Fawal. Welcome back, Richard.
Oh, it's so good to be back. It's been such a long time since I've been on the show.
How's Tennessee, sir?
Tennessee is freaking
you traitor.
Awesome. It's awesome. It's beautiful. It's mellow and very low stress. And people are really nice here.
I know. I kind of want to move now.
You know, there's great food. There's great beer. There's beautiful scenic views of the mountains.
You know, I had one or two brewery must visits on my list for when I finally get to you in Tennessee, Richard. But every time you send a picture to our text chain, to our DC Beer text chain, I add another place to the list. So a begrudging thank you for that. What are you having this evening? What's in your glass?
My glass is, believe it or not, all the way here in Tennessee. I am drinking the Blue Jacket Hints of Baguette
Yes.
style pale lager.
Yes.
Nice.
Which I picked up and brought home on my last trip to DC. You guys know I'm back in DC all the time. I'll be back there next week, and I'll be back the week after that. So I always try to bring a little something home for my new beer drinking friends here. But what about you, Brandy? What have you been drinking?
Well, at the moment, literally nothing because I've crushed all the beverages that I've had since I've been home. And luckily, I was able to share all of these cans with my partner, although I definitely drank the entire can of Lost Generations. My heavy heart will always show, which is a Munich Dunkel, I'm a dark beer lover. But Matt and I shared this tiny, cute, skinny can of this beer. It's called Rhyming Numbers. It's a pale ale. And our lovely dear friend and co-owner, Jordan Harvey, brought this from Georgia. This is from Two Tides Brewing. It was incredible. I opened this and I literally drank a first sip and Matt was like, how was it? And then it was already gone. I didn't chug it, but it went away way too quickly. And then, of course, I had another Lost Generation. I had Intimate Essence German Pilsner. So I had some beautiful afterwork beers, thanks to Lost Gen and Two Tides and Jordan. Thank you. Stein, I know that you always have all the yummy lagers. What's going on over there?
Well, to no surprise to you, Brandy, I'm having a yummy lager. I'm having Freigeist Dortmunder. So Freigeist is a contract brewer in Germany, run by Sebastian Sauer, friend of DC Beer. So Sebastian has his Dortmunder, which he describes maltier than Pils and hoppier than Helles. Export beers were the historical specialty of the industrial city of Dortmund. So not only is it a delicious, light, little hoppy, little malty lager, very well balanced, it's a historic beer. And it comes to us from Urban Chestnut Brewing out of St. Louis, Missouri. And the last time Urban Chestnut was in town, at least that I remember, was either during the Craft Brewers Conference or maybe during Savor years and years ago. So it's great to have the Urban Chestnut beer back in town. In this case, the Freigeist label Dortmunder. Absolutely delicious. Really, really wonderful stuff. And speaking of Germany, I just wanted to say happy August 9th. The Oktoberfests are on the shelves. Despite the heat, we know fall is coming. How do we know? We know because we're 46 days from Munich's world-famous Oktoberfest. Hashtag junket, first to London for some pubs, and now to Munich for the world-famous Oktoberfest, which starts September 21st. Speaking of festivals, we are 9 weeks out from Snallygaster, which is happening the same day of the Great American Beer Festival, which is October 12th. 67 days out, but who's counting?
You are.
Oh, that's right. Darn it. I am counting, aren't I?
I'm not counting actively, but I look at my Google Calendar 100 times a day because I have ADHD and I have to focus my brain. But I'm like, oh yay, what are we doing? What are we doing? Snelly! It's so exciting. I can't wait. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things that leads up to Snelly too. Like all the guests that we're going to have on and the events, and like DC just turns into like this wonderful mecca. It's such a wonderful time. It's like Christmas, but in October it's Snelly. It's like happy Snelly. I love it. I can't wait. Ugh.
No, absolutely. And that's why I'm having the Fry Guys. I mean, I'm having it because I love Julie and Beth. Shout out to the brew shop in Arlington. They had, this Fry Guys beer. But I got it because I was like, oh, that's Sebastian Sauer's brand. He's going to be here for Snallygaster. And then Julie was like, Stein, that's like 2 months away. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I got to get it now. I got to prep. You got to start prepping.
Wait, he's coming? Hell yes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to be getting drunk with him. I'm so excited.
We're going to have some German beers with our wonderful German friend, Sebastian. Cannot wait. But speaking of his historic beer, Dortmunder, I can't wait to serve him some Senate and some Senate Maerzen, which is very fitting for the show we have today, because joining us on this episode, we have 3 special guests. They are Chris Broom, Kimberly Totten, and Pete Jones. A quick introduction. Chris Broom is production manager at Right Proper at their Brookland production house in Washington, D.C. Before Right Proper, he ran production as head brewer at Silver Branch Brewing, Lager House and Beer Garden in Silver Spring, Maryland. Kimberly Totten is collections manager at the Heurich House Museum. The Heurich House Museum honestly explores the American experience through the legacy of German immigrant Christian Heurich and his Washington, D.C. brewery, and creates an equitable path to success for local, small-scale businesses. Their dual mission of public history education and public service is directly related to their core philosophy that house museums should be dynamic and relevant to our modern communities. Pete Jones is a professional researcher and is co-owner and co-founder of Lost Lagers, Washington, D.C.'s premier beverage research firm. He is responsible for discovering the 1949 Senate beer in the National Archives and is a longtime medal-winning homebrewer. Well, Pete, I'm going to start with you. What can you tell us about Senate Maerzen beer?
So this was a beer that was originally produced by Christian Heurich, and Kim Bender, the director of the Heurich House, reached out to me about, possibly bringing some additional Heurich beers, back to life and back to DC and the 21st century. And so, Christian Heurich brewed many more beers besides just Senate and Heurich's Lager. And so we have quite a few potential great options to bring back. And, Maerzen in particular was special partly because it was one of the only all malt beers that Christian Heurich brewed. I ran into Jake Berg at a beer event a few weeks ago, and one of the first things that he said to me is, "Are you telling me that Christian Heurich brewed a all malt beer in the 19th century?" And I said, "Yeah, we have the receipts for it." And so this is a special one, partly for that reason, partly because it was one of Christian's favorite beers, according to his memoir. And it was also an award-winning beer, just like Senate. It won several gold medals at various beer competitions and World's Fairs and so forth. So it's just a very special beer in general.
I would be remiss not to mention a man named Paul Kaiser, who was the Baltimore and Vicinity District President, a Master Brewers Association of America member. It was Paul Kaiser's notebook in which this 1933 recipe comes from. And I really have to thank Paul's granddaughter, Paula Jacobs. And Paula is a friend of Lost Lagers, of yours and mine, Pete. She's a wonderful human being, and she said she remembered her grandfather fondly. So it's nice to know that there's a human connection outside of the beer history and the research that went into this. Kimberly, can you tell us a little bit about some of the work you did and the sources you used for the creation of Senate Maerzen beer?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first learned that we were going to revive another historic beer, the first thing I did was pull all of our Maerzen collections from our Breweriana collection. Thanks to an acquisition we had in 2019 we have over 1,000 objects related to Breweriana for the Christian Heurich Brewing Company. So I pulled out those, trying to find bottle labels, advertisements, any marketing material that might have descriptions of what Maerzen tasted like, what it was made with. I know that we found some references in advertisements saying it was all malt, which was really helpful, obviously. We also had Paula Jacobs had loaned us in 2013 Paul Kaiser's notebook, which had the Maerzen recipe, which is, of course, foundational. So that was where I started with all of this. Is just, I know that eventually Lost Loggers looked into National Archives and a bunch of other sources, but for me, I really just started with what we had here.
How do you see the Heurich House's dual mission of public history and public service reflected in the Senate Maerzen beer project?
We really do see Senate and Maerzen as a public history project, not just a beer revival. This idea came from our CEO and museum director, Kim Bender, and she really took off with that idea. Our mission, which really focuses on small-scale businesses and connecting those businesses with public history, education, and public service. So kind of taking those ideas and putting them together, taking the history of Christian Heurich's brewery and teaching people about that history of immigration, labor history, and DC history in general, and then trying to connect that with our communities today about right proper brewing and some of our local communities here in DC.
I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about some of the other programs that the House is running and how they vary and differ from the Senate Maerzen Beer Project.
So besides the historic revival of Senate and Maerzen, we also have a couple different programs going on at the Heurich House Museum, including the Heurich Urban Manufacturing Incubator, which really focuses on small-scale manufacturing community businesses and trying to help them through their business life cycles, starting from small and slowly, gradually getting bigger. And then we also have our education and public history programs. We work to have markets in the house, to kind of connecting the history with modern day communities, such as immigrant communities and other local DC small scale businesses.
Thank you, Kimberly. Chris, you've been brewing Senate beer for a few years now. How does Senate Maerzen beer differ from the Senate beer you'd been brewing over the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, I think back to a point that you guys have already touched on, the biggest difference is the lack of any corn in there. I think the choices of hops that were available back when this recipe was, originally created were, relatively limited. So, it does use, to a large extent, the same ingredients, but, that's where it's interesting. Just as, small minor changes to the grain build, to the timing of the hop additions, can make all the difference from a 4.7%, light American lager to a 6% Maerzen. At the end of the day, both beers are the majority American ground Pilsner malt. The Senate lager has, a good amount of flake corn in there, whereas the Maerzen has a little bit of black malt for color, and then we added in a little bit of Munich malt to give it that breadiness. So that was the one ingredient that is not 100% historically accurate, but we threw it in there to kind of bring it up to a kind of modern sensibility. So, relatively small tweak, but at the end of the day, should be a very, very similar beer to what was originally brewed back in the day.
And I wanted to jump in on, as Chris mentioned, there's some Munich malt, and essentially we expect that early 20th century malt, that was used in 1933 would have been more under modified compared to the malt that we're using today, and so we do think it would have had a little more color and more proteins, that a little bit more oomph. So that's why I think like that Munich kind of really helps bring us into what Christian might have been tasting.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, we're trying to recreate, a recipe using, essentially different ingredients. So, to that extent as well, we did also add in a very small percentage of melanoidin malt to kind of replicate the sort of kind of caramelization that would have been going on when they're essentially decocting the brew. So, again, that's, something that, we are limited, that that we can't actually accomplish by way of our equipment. So, luckily these days we have all sorts of varieties of malts to help us recreate that flavor profile.
How are you finding the finished product?
We're all really enjoying it so far. It's excellent. I think it turned out kind of as we had envisioned. We just packaged. We're doing 2 batches over the course of the season this year. We just packaged out the first batch. We've got the second batch lagering. So no, I think we are very happy with how this beer turned out. 6%, nice bright amber color to it. And that was something that was interesting to me. I think we had a relatively good idea of what the final beer was like. But it was interesting when you guys said you didn't even really actually know what the final ABV was. That was the one like little bit of detail that you had a hard time finding in any of the historical documentation. So yeah, I think we decided to aim for a nice round 6%. Came out right as planned. So no, we are very happy with the finished product, and I hope you guys all like it when we release it.
Yeah, we knew the starting point, the starting strength of the beer, but not the final strength. Along the list of things we didn't know, we discovered the kettle size was about 240 barrels. Have you ever brewed on a 240 barrel kettle before?
I can't say that I have. No, everything. All of my brewing has been limited to everywhere I've brewed has been on a 15 barrel system. So now that's as big and as small as I've brewed.
Yeah, it's certainly something that gets lost in the discussion is the scale and the size of the Heurich Brewing Company. So it was wonderful for Pete and I to uncover these things and now share them with the world. Kimberly, I'm wondering what other things we haven't shared with the world that you think the DC Beer listenership would benefit from to know about.
It's a great question. I think you mentioned at the beginning that Christian Heurich didn't just brew Senate. I think when people know about Senate, the historic revival, they think that's his only label. Maerzen is one of a few others, including Heurich Lager and Old Georgetown. And so I think we can see us doing something like this in the future. We would love, if this goes well, to do another release in the future. It'd be great.
Well said. Pete, anything you learned on this project that you think would be worth letting the listenership know about?
One little interesting note that we found, I mentioned that it was all malt and Jake was incredulous. And in fact, the federal government was also incredulous about this fact. And so we found at the National Archives this whole basically legal proceeding that the predecessor agency to the Food and Drug Administration actually seized a bunch of Heurich's beer that was labeled as all malt. And I guess that through testing, they claimed that, in fact, it did have some non-malt portion. Of course, we're looking at this 1933 recipe and we see this does not have any corn. It doesn't have any rice. But kind of digging into the typical process that they would have gone through. We read this, one of the primary brewers' textbooks, and they recommend using a little bit of a lighter beer to help carbonate this beer. And so we were pretty sure that they probably used just a little bit of Heurich Senate to help carbonate Maerzen. And of course, Senate has quite a bit of corn in it. And so that probably showed up on their testing. But it was a big part of this early 20th century, and whether these German brewers could brew beer with corn and say that their beer was, quote, beer, because it has, this an adjunct to it. So it was kind of an interesting little side note, trying to recreate this beer, but also learning about this overall big discussion in America at that time.
Yeah, that's very well said, Pete. It's of note that, the brewers were advocating for, let's say, corn in beer, but that the federal government was saying you can't advertise it as all malt if there is just a splash of corn lager in it, which we speculated was how they carbonated the beer with Kreuzen. I'm wondering, Chris, if you can tell us a little bit about how you see the beer going. Do you see this beer maintaining its flavor for several months as we moved out of August, September, October, November, December?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now this beer should hold up well over time, as well as any of our beers. The main thing that's going to impact a beer's longevity, at least with the beers, craft beers, is going to be the presence of tons of hops. this being, pretty light on the hop side, having those kind of darker malts that can, stand up to time, having that higher ABV that'll help round it out over time. No, this is a beer that should only get better in the next few months and be great, for the better part of a year. I mean, I don't think any of this is going to hopefully last that long, but this beer should be great drinking as long as we've got it.
Kimberly, I wanted to ask you, any parting words to share with the DC Beer listenership?
Maerzen is going to be sold obviously at Right Proper and anywhere Right Proper is sold, but it's also going to be at the Heurich House Museum's Beer Garden. So if you all want to come down to the Beer Garden, it's open in the evenings on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and all afternoons Saturday. So get it while it's still here, because I have a feeling it's going to be flying off the shelves.
Pete, any parting words for the DC Beer listeners?
Yeah, this beer was obviously very special to Christian Heurich, and so we're psyched to be brewing it. It was also a beer that he would brew once a year and enjoy with family and friends around the holidays. And so I think it's going to be a great beer to enjoy, with the Oktoberfest season for sure. And then as it lasts, if there's any left in November and December, a great beer to enjoy around a fire with friends and family as well. So can't wait to hold some and do that as well.
Chris, parting words before we sign off.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one thing just to touch on real quick is, we talked a lot about the liquid in the cans and kegs, but I think one thing that our design team did a great job with was refreshing that label, because the label that we have on the cans is, I think, very true to the original, and has some interesting little kind of artifacts from history tucked into that label. So I think we're not just proud of the liquid in the can, or proud of how it looks on the shelf too. So happy with how this turned out all around.
I just wanted to echo your sentiment, Chris. Our humongous thanks to Mike Van Hall, a wonderful designer who helped with the Maerzen label. So we're very excited for you to see cans at the Heurich House at 1921 at the Beer Garden there, or at Girard Street at Brookland, Right Proper's Brookland production facility. Kimberly, Pete, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Mike.
Wow, that was a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Mike. That was really interesting, and I'm definitely going to have to make it up to DC to enjoy some delicious Maerzen.
Y'all know I love me some Maerzen beer, so I'm ready. I am ready. Bring me those dunkels and those brown ales. Give them to me.
We can't wait. We can have some outside at the 1921 Beer Garden at the Heurich House, behind the Heurich House, or we can have it at the Right Proper Brookland production house, where we are known guests, and we even have Prima, the brewery cat, warming up to us, inviting us in for a nice Maerzen in Prima's palace, shall we say, Right Proper Brookland. Brandy, I know we have some wonderful events coming up. Today is August 9th. What's happening right around the corner?
Cannot wait. NRG sent out a newsletter about shilling coming to Church Key on Friday. And I was just at Church Key, but I don't want to pass up going to have meet the shilling folk, right? So now I'm going to have to mosey back over to Logan Circle, which I'm a little bit dreading, but I'd love, the only reason I would go over there is for Church Key or beer. So shout out to you guys, but I'm going to be heading over there. But this weekend is really the biggest DC Beer weekend of the actual month of August, because Women's Brew Culture Club, WBCC, is going to be at Lion Hall tomorrow, Saturday, with our friend Alyssa, and lovely DC Beer member, I do have to add. She's the most wonderful person. She's the beverage director for that restaurant group, and she absolutely crushes it. She brings in tons of beer dinners. She does a beer dinner every single month, and it crushes. And I'm so happy and proud of her. But the Women's Brew Culture Club gets to hang out with her tomorrow. And then Sunday is our beer share, our monthly beer share. We had 4 new faces show up last month at Right Proper, And I cannot wait to meet the new people that show up this weekend. So we're going to be at Denizens. We're back at Denizens. Going to go see Julie. It's her birthday month, so maybe I'll bring her a gift. But yeah, it's going to be a very busy weekend. Mike, are you going to get to go to Church Key?
I will no doubt be at Church Key at some point. If not today, another day. But Mallard, I'm so excited. Right below Church Key is the newly opened Mallard. And we got a chance to try some food there earlier this week. And so now, by the time this episode comes out, they'll be open. They're already open. What am I saying? I'm getting my days mixed up. But we are super pumped for Mallard. The food was incredible. And we can't wait for you to experience the food yourself.
So when you go to Mallard, which I highly I can't even tell you to go more than I'm verbally telling you, because it's just trust me. It looks different than Birch and Barley, what was there, but it has this kind of Southern ambiance. It's not trying too hard. It's very cute, but the food was mind-blowing. I had this braised and then fried duck leg. Oh my God. I'm still thinking about it and just drooling over the thought of having it. I destroyed that. Everything was so perfect, but everything was just so welcoming. And the ducks and there are a lot of pecans on the menu. So if you have a nut allergy, just be prepared.
Before Mallard, we were discussing the Women's Brew Culture Club, and that's our friend Alyssa. If you want to be as cool as Alyssa, check out patreon.com/DC Beer. That's patreon.com/DC Beer. If you want to be as cool as our friend Julie Verratti, who we're going to see for the DC Beer Share, patreon.com/DC Beer.
Yeah, we want to shout out our newest members of DC Beer over at Patreon. Mike Lestort, thank you for joining as an enthusiast member. Juan Delis, thank you. A new supporter, doing a $5 a month deal. Ellen Daniels, another $5 a month supporters. And then there's Josh, who also joined last month. Thank you all so much for supporting DC Beer and what we do. And like Mike said, if you want to support DC Beer and everything we do and get access to things like the Women's Brew Culture Club, get access to things like our monthly beer shares and all the other cool stuff, discounts on beer at lots of different breweries and tap rooms and retail outlets, just go to patreon.com/DC Beer and sign up.
I know it's towards the end of the month, but I want to go ahead and tell you guys about it so you don't snooze and lose. But Dynasty is having their 6th anniversary on August 24th, and it's going to be really fun. Dynasty makes incredible beer, and it seems like somehow they're still coming in under the radar for folks who maybe don't know too much about the local beer scene. Fabio is the brewer over at Dynasty, and for those of you who know Fabio, you know that he is an absolutely incredible brewer. He is, as Mike Stein says, your favorite brewer's favorite brewer, which is an absolute fact. He's so down to earth. He's kind of like a mentor. He's always changing and evolving and making these incredible beers. But they're actually doing a collaboration beer release that day on their anniversary with Ocelot, and everyone loves Ocelot. So if you can, head out to Ashburn on August 24th for their anniversary. There's a hot wing challenge and live music all day. I'm going to be there, so you should come hang out with me and go have good beer. See you then.
This has been fun, guys. I'm so glad that I could join you, and I hope I get to do this again soon.
Thanks for sitting in, Richard. We are here for you. DCBeer.com, at DCBeer across social media. Give us a shout. If it's personal, slide into the DMs. We will absolutely support in any way we can. Look out for each other. Protect your mental health. And if you can, have a great day. Have a great week.
Have a great beer.
Cheers.